Dandavat pranam Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol Prabhuji.
Mataji, he can't hear us, I think. Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hari Bol.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Janavallabha
Girivaradhari.
Yashodhanandana Rajajannaranjana
Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana.
Yashodhanandana Rajajannaranjana
Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna,
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna Krishna,
Hare
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 Hare, Hare Ram,
Hare Rama
Hare
Hare Rama
Rama, Rama
Rama Rama Hare
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 Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna Krishna, Hare
Krishna
Hare,
Hare
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama
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 Rama,
Rama
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare
Hare.
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Jaya Radha Shama Sundara Shama Sundara
Jaya Radha Sham Sundar, Radha Sham Sundar Radhe.
Jaya Gauranita 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 Jaya Gauranita
Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Sai Gaura Hari Bo
Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol.
Jai Vishnupad Parahams Parivrajacharya Astottara Sarasri Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai,
Nanta Koti Vaishnavran Ki
Jai,
नामाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की
Jai,
प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की श्री
Jai,
श्री राधा कृष्ण श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की
Jai,
श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय श्री
Jai,
नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय
Jai,
गंगा माई की जय यमुना
Jai,
माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय श्रीमती
Jai,
तुलसी महारानी की जय
Jai,
समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय
Jai.
निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि
Hari
हरि
Hari
all
Bol,
glories to the assembled devotees
Hare Krishna,
all glories to the assembled devotees
Hare
all
Krishna,
glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga
Hare
all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Today Please. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Om Namo
Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
So, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's very nice to be with all of you. So today we're reading from Canto number 5, chapter number 5, entitled Lord Rishabh's Teachings, and we're reading text number 15. Putram chasisyam chanirpo gururva.
Putram Shashisyam Chanipo Gururva.
Malokakamo madanugraharta.
Malokakamo
Itham
Madhuanugrahata.
vimanyur anusisyad attajnan.
Itim Vimanyur Anushishya Tatajjanan.
Nayo jayat karmashu karma mudhan.
Nayo Yatkarma Shukarma
Kam
Muda.
yo jayan manujartam labheta.
Namyo Jayan Manujyoratam Labheta.
Nipatayan nastadrisam higarte.
Nipatayan Nashtadrisham Higarte.
Putram shashisyam chanirpo gururva.
Putram Shashyam Sanirpo Gururva.
Mallokakamo madhanugraharta.
Mallokakamo Madhuanugrahata.
Itham vimanyur anusisyad atajnan.
Itham Vimanyur Anushishyatatajnam.
Na yo jayet karmashu karma mudhan.
Nayo Yatkarmashu Karma Mudha.
Kam yo jayan manujartam labheta.
Kamyo Yamanju Gatam Labheta.
Nipatayan nastadrisham higarte.
Nipatayan Nashtadrisham Higarte.
Putram shashisyam chanirpo gururva.
Putram Shashisyam Danipa Gururva.
Mallokakamo madanugraharta.
Mallokakamo Madhuanugrahata.
Tam vimanyor anusisyad atajnan.
Itham Vimanyur Anushishyatatajnam.
Nayo jayat karmashu karma mudhan.
Nayo Yatkarmashu Karma Mudha.
Tam yo jayan manujartam labheta.
Kamyo Jamanyu Ratam Labheta.
Nipatayan nastadrisham higarte.
Nipatayan Nashtadrisham Higarte.
Putran
Shashisyam Janipa Gururva.
Mallokakamo Madhuanugraharta.
Ekam
Itham Vimanyur Anushishyatatajnam.
Nayo jayat karmasu karma mudhan. Kamyo jayan manujyoratabheta. Nipatayanastadvisham higarte.
Shashisyam Sanripo Gururva.
Putram
Gururva.
Kamo
Mallokakamo Madhuanugraharta.
Itham Bhimanyur Anushishyat Dakyan Nayo Jayet Karma
Karma
Sukarma
Sukarmamodhan
Kamyo
Kamyo Jayan
Manujortham Labheta
Labheta
Vipadayanashtadrisham
Vipadayanastam
Higarte
Putram
Uttanashtasyanchanipo Gururva
Mallokakamo
Kakamo
Mad Anugrahasha Itam Vimanyu Anusheshat Dadyan
Nayo Jayet
Jayate
Karma
Karma
Sukarmamodhan
Sukarmamodhan
Kamyo Jayan Manujortham Labheta Nipatayanashtadrisham Higarte
Putram
Shatishyam
Chanipo
Gururva
Mallokakamo
Namo Madanugrahya
Itam Vimanyu
Tampimanyoranushishyadadadgyan
Nayo
Karma Sukarmamodhan
Yortham Labheta Nipatayanashtadrisham Higarte.
For the word translation. Putran, the
Putran,
sons.
the sons.
Sha
Isha,
and Sisyan, the disciples. Sha
Krishna
and
Paramtam Sabhasantisu
Nirpaha,
Nipivachaksharatam Tapivisa
the king,
Pavipanyavajapsa Samindante
Guru,
Vishnuparamtapam
the spiritual master. Va, ho, matlokakama,
Matlokakama,
desiring to go to my abode.
desiring to go to my abode.
Mat anugraha artaha,
Mat anugraha ataha,
thinking that to achieve my mercy is the aim of life.
thinking to achieve my mercy is the aim of life.
Itam,
Idam,
in this manner.
in this manner.
Vimanyu,
Vimanyu,
free from anger.
free from anger.
Anusisyat,
Anusisyat,
should instruct.
should instruct.
Atat jnan,
Atatyan,
bereft of spiritual knowledge.
bereft of spiritual knowledge.
Na,
Na,
not.
not.
Yojayet,
Yojayat,
should engage.
should engage.
Karmashu,
Karmasu,
Karmasu,
in fruitive activities.
in fruitive activities.
Karmamudhan,
Karma
Karmamudha,
Mudha,
simply engaged in pious or impious activities.
simply engaged in pious or impious activities.
Kam,
What?
Yojayan,
Yojayan,
engaging.
engaging.
Manujaha,
Manujaha,
a man.
a man.
Artam,
Artham,
benefits.
benefits.
Labhita,
Labheta,
can achieve.
can achieve.
Nipatayan,
Nipatayan,
causing to fall.
causing to fall.
Nashtadrisham,
Nashtadrisham,
one who is already bereft of his transcendental sight.
one who is already bereft of his transcendental sight.
He, indeed,
Indeed.
Garte,
Garte,
in the whole.
in the whole.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Right.
Translation. If one is serious about going back home,
If one is serious about going back home,
back to Godhead,
back to Godhead,
he must consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
he must consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
the summum bonum
The summum
the
bonum
summum bonum
and chief aim of life.
and chief aim of life.
If he is a father
If he is a father
instructing his sons,
instructing his sons,
a spiritual master instructing his disciples,
a spiritual master instructing his disciples,
or a king instructing his servants,
or a king
he
instructing his
must
servants,
instruct them as I have advised.
You must instruct
he
them
must
as I have
instruct them as
advised.
I have advised.
Without being angry,
Without being angry,
he should continue to give instructions,
You
he should continue giving instructions.
even if his disciple,
Even if his disciple,
son or citizen,
son or citizen,
is sometimes unable to follow his order.
is
is
sometimes
sometimes unable to follow his order.
Ignorant people who engage in pious
Ignorant people who engage in pious
and impious activities
and impious activities
should be engaged in devotional service by all means.
should be engaged in devotional service by all means.
They should always avoid fruitive activity.
They should always avoid fruitive activities.
If one puts into the bondage of karmic activity
If one puts into the bondage of karmic activity
his disciple, son or citizen,
his disciple, son or citizen,
who is bereft of transcendental vision,
who is bereft of transcendental vision,
how will one profit?
how will one profit?
It is like leading a blind man
It is like leading a blind man
to a dark well and causing him to fall in.
to a dark well and causing him to fall in.
कल नहीं खोली थी
Om Jnanatirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya
Shalakaya
Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Sapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priyo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama
भगवती वासुदेव श्री कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु हे दीन बंधु जगतपते.
Someone's chanting online.
I'll just read the translation again. If one is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, he must consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum and chief aim of life. If he is a father instructing his sons, a spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens, he must instruct them as I have advised. Without being angry, he should continue giving instructions, even if his disciple, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. Ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should always be engaged in devotional service by all means. They should always avoid fruitive activity. If one puts into the bondage of karmic activity his disciple, son, or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, how will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in. I think I missed the purport earlier, so I'll just read that now. Purport. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 3:26, Na buddhi bedam janayed agnanam karma sanghinam joshayed sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruitive action. They should be encouraged not to refrain from work, but to work in the spirit of devotion. So this is a very wonderful part in the Bhagavatam where the Lord himself has incarnated as Lord Rishabdev to teach the example of how to be a king, how to be a leader, and how we can use the position that we have in life to advance in spiritual life. So the first point that he mentions here, Rishabdev, while speaking to his sons, he's saying that if one is serious about going back to Godhead, he must consider this mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first thing that came to mind, and one of the first things that's mentioned here, is seriousness. So I was thinking, what does it mean to actually be serious? Because we might be interested in certain things, but when we become serious, then our interaction with that might change. So, for example, in this Krishna consciousness movement, when we first came to the temple or first met the devotees, we might have been interested, to come and see the deities, how beautifully they dressed. We definitely would have enjoyed the prasadam at the feast. We might like the kirtan. We might like speaking to the devotees, and we might just like the atmosphere. But if it just stays at that level, then in one sense, it's just like a ritualistic activity. We might just come on a Saturday, attend the program, have a nice time, and then we go back home, and you forget about what happened or what was the point of the temple in that sense. So being serious is very different from being interested. So His Holiness Keshava Swami Maharaj, he gives 3 levels of seriousness or surrender in that sense. So the first thing, like we mentioned, when we come to the temple for the first time, and we get attracted to these things like kirtan, prasadam, the beautiful deities, etc. After a while, and after coming, to the temple often, one might actually decide to identify with these things, like the devotees and the kirtan. They might start to like it. And at one point in their life, they might actually say, you know what, I'm actually a Hare Krishna devotee. If they meet somebody and somebody says, okay, I do this, I do that, they'll be like, yes, I'm a Hare Krishna devotee. I go to the temple. I try to, think about Krishna, etc. So that's the first thing. It's where we change our identity. We start to identify as a devotee of Krishna. But higher than that is when we start to change our activities. So not just our identity, but our actual activities. So in that way, we might then start to, only eat prasadam, cook at home, offer to our deities or to our frames of Krishna and the parampara, etc., and then only eat those foodstuffs. We might start to chant Hare Krishna at home. We might start to change what we listen to in terms of music. We might only, try to listen to music that is glorifying Krishna and Krishna's devotee. We might start to read Prabhupada's books. We might start to do some service in the temple, for example. So that second stage, that second level, is where we have started identifying as a devotee, but then we also have started changing our activities. So moving away from our mundane activities, where it was centered around sense gratification and just trying to have a good time and a good life, we would change our activities to now direct our senses and our services towards pleasing Krishna. So that is definitely a very good stage to be at, because we are moving away from enjoying for ourselves, but now trying to please Krishna and the devotees. But higher than that, Keshava Swami says, is when we change our mentality. So if you look at the first 2, our identity and our activities, those things are very much external. So if we had to change that, we might start to, dress the attire of devotees like kurta or a sari, etc. We might start to do those activities like singing in the kirtan, chanting Hare Krishna, having a bead bag, etc. But in one sense, those things are also very much external. there can be times where we might have these things just like a devotee, but internally, are we actually like a devotee? And that's why the third stage of, progression towards Krishna consciousness in that sense and becoming closer to Krishna is where we develop the internal mentality of a devotee. So not just what everyone else can see, but what we basically feel and perceive in our own consciousness. And when we come to that stage, then we're actually practicing Krishna consciousness at its fullest extent. So thinking about that kind of, three stages and how to get to those three stages, the third stage of changing our mentality or our consciousness. So I had a few points that I noted down. So the thing is, in our normal life, like we were mentioning a bit earlier, our life is centered, initially around just ourselves and everything else around us that actually pleases ourselves, because naturally we believe we are the enjoyer and the master. So as we grow up through life, we were always considering what would please us. And if we had, a family, or if we have, as you grow up, you have kids, etc., you want to get them to do things that also will please you, You want them to get a good education, you want them to behave in a certain way, but those things also is an extension of pleasing yourself, because if they do those good things, you feel better about yourself, that I have achieved my duty, I have done what I needed to do, etc. So in that way, it's centered still around ourselves. But when we come to the stage of changing our consciousness towards pleasing Krishna and pleasing the devotees, then we have to not think about internally now that I am the enjoyer, but we have to realize that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Krishna is the supreme master, and we have to serve him. And that understanding is easy to understand and to hear, but it's very hard to implement, because, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, actually before that, we know that Jivera Swarupa Hai Krishnera Nityadas, that we are the eternal servant of Krishna. It's easy to understand this on an external level, but internally, that to develop that kind of understanding that I'm the servant of Krishna, we have to always do things to serve Krishna. And that's why Srila Prabhupada has gave us this wonderful process of Krishna consciousness. But to go even deeper than that, and that's what Rishabh is basically saying here, that one has to become serious. To go deeper, we have to not only try to serve Krishna, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has advised, Gopi Patur Padakamayor Das Das Anu Das. So on a practical level, yes, we want to serve Krishna, but for all devotees, we want to actually get to a point where we will serve the devotees that are around us. We have to become the servant of the servant of the servant. So on a practical level, that's how we can apply that, point of the fact that we are not the enjoyer, but Krishna is the enjoyer. And we need to serve Krishna, but on a practical level, it comes down to serving the devotees. So that means coming to the temple, taking on some kind of service, not worried about, getting recognition for what you're doing, but serving the devotees, trying to please the devotees around us. Not criticizing the devotees, but coming to a point of appreciating their qualities. So on a material level, and adding to this point of, mentally changing our consciousness to become a servant of the devotees, the comparison that we can look at is on a material level. Life is always about, how can I become in a better situation? I can study harder, I can become the best in my class, I can get a good education, I can get a good job, I can get the best job, I can become the manager, I can get a good house, I can become, the lord of everything that I survey in that sense. And everybody will listen to me very nicely. I'll have a nice, obedient wife and children. In that way, I will be very happy. But unfortunately, that doesn't really result in ultimate happiness. But yet on the spiritual side, it's actually inverted. So we are always trying to become the servant of the servant. We have to always try to become more humble than a blade of grass. We have to consider ourselves lower than basically all the devotees around us. And if we can do that, then actually, even though it seems like an inferior position from a material perspective, but spiritually, when we have become smaller, we actually have the capacity to understand and appreciate the greatness of the Lord. So I was thinking of an example, and if you were next to a very, very big mountain, but you're right next to the mountain, you know, that part, you actually can't appreciate how big the mountain is. You might just think, okay, what I'm seeing right in front of me, this is the mountain. But if you have to walk very far back and you become smaller in that sense, and then you see the mountain far away, you see the whole gigantic mountain that is so many times bigger than you, then you can actually appreciate the greatness of the mountain. So similarly, if we only think very close to ourselves and only things around ourselves, we will only try to become bigger than everything else. But we have to step away from that identification of I am the enjoyer and the controller, and realize that Krishna is actually the supreme enjoyer and controller, and that his devotees are actually there, in one sense, for us to serve them, to become more advanced, and to realize the greatness of Krishna. So, in that sense, spiritual vision and material vision is very, very different. The other thing is when we look at the devotees that surround us, and I mean, this goes not only for devotees, but even in the material field, we have a tendency to compare ourselves to other devotees and people, even at the workplace. You might think, how did this person get this position? He doesn't seem very qualified compared to myself. I should be in that position. And similarly, in the devotee community, one might say, but how did this devotee get such good position or recognition? I think I have a better qualification in that sense. But coming back to changing our consciousness, we have to realize that Krishna is giving the ability in that person. And we have to then appreciate that, because it's not something only that person has achieved, but it's Krishna that's actually giving them that, you know, greatness in that sense. Because Krishna does say in the Bhagavad Gita that of all things that are splendorous, he is the splendor within that thing, in that person. So we have to come to the realization and, look at the good qualities in other devotees, especially, and not try to think, how can I get to that position, but rather think, how can I develop such an attitude that I can, get that kind of ability within myself to serve Krishna in a better way, not to get recognition and prestige in that way. So the other point that I was thinking that we can do on a practical level to change our mentality, the thing is, generally we have this tendency, at least myself, to find fault in other people. It's a very natural thing. Um, even like with my kids, for example, you're always looking to say, okay, you did that wrong. Can you do this? Can you, do that, do this better, do that better, etc. So we have the tendency to always find a fault. And if we do that, then we only latch on to the negative things within people. Now, Prabhupada, on the other hand, when he went to America, everyone around him was not qualified in the least bit to receive that kind of knowledge that he was trying to give. But Prabhupada did not say, you're not qualified. I can't do much. I'll just go back to Vrindavan and I'll just, carry on with my own bhajan and I'll advance in that way. No, what he did was he saw that small spark within each of those different devotees and, well, the hippies at that point initially. And what Prabhupada did was he actually fanned that spark. He took some tiny good quality that that person might have had that no one else around them would have seen that, And Prabhupada actually made that small spark into a gigantic fire, that we have so many devotees from, 50 years back even, that are now such great Vaishnavas within our movement. And in that way, if we can try to replicate that example of always trying to look at some good quality. So, it's a very, very long journey, to change that mindset. But if we find ourselves trying to say something or think something bad, even in our mind about someone, we have to try to just immediately think, okay, yes, but what is something good this person has? Because everyone does have some really good quality, and we have to try to emulate Prabhupada's example and fan that tiny spiritual spark, because that is something that we might be also lacking in our own life. So yes, those are some of the ways that I think we can develop some seriousness and get to that stage where we not just changing our identity to become devotees, not just changing our activities to start chanting or to read Prabhupada's books, but come to the third stage of changing our consciousness. So those are some of the points that I had on that one. The other thing that's mentioned here is that Rishabh says that we should consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Samam Bonam. So Prabhupada has used this, phrase quite a few times. So I was interested to find out what this means. So actually it comes from like the Greek philosophy. So many years back, there was a philosopher called Shikiro, I don't know how you pronounce that, but that's the name I saw. And he was a deep thinker, and he was trying to think, what is the most good that someone can do in their life? What is the best thing that the person can do in their life? So it wasn't really related to God in that sense, but he was just trying to think that, people are doing so many different activities, but what is the actual best thing that somebody should be doing? So he came to a bit of a conclusion saying that to become virtuous, to always try to do the right thing, that is like the best thing in life. So yes, that is a bit of, a good example in one sense, because at that time there was many other philosophers, Greek philosophers especially, who had the concept. I think one of them was called Epicurus. He came to the conclusion that the best thing that someone can do in life is to do whatever that pleases them, basically sense enjoyment. So he was thinking that if you just please yourself in whatever way you want and how you want, that is the best thing one can do in life. So at least, this Shakiro, who came up with this phrase, samam panam, he actually had a bit of a mode of goodness kind of quality to do the right thing, etc. So Prabhupada has extended this to now that we all know that the best thing that one can do in life is to become a very great servant of Krishna, and to basically direct our whole life to try and please Krishna. So that's what Samam Banam means for us. And here Rishabh mentions that mercy is the thing that we should try to make. Mercy of the Supreme Lord is the thing that we need to try to make our biggest aim in life. So mercy is a very, very interesting thing. There's a few times I've heard where mercy means that you're given something that you don't actually deserve. But then the other thing is that we hear the verse, Patenu kampam sushimikshimano, bunjane vatman kritam vipakam, hridvat vapubir hridana maste, jivera yamukti sadayapak. So in that verse, it says that a devotee, all the while going through his past karmas and his, distressful times, he's always waiting for the mercy of the Lord, because he knows that whatever is happening to him is as a result of his previous karmas. And just by having that mentality and that consciousness, he's able to then just wait and realize, that everything is happening of his past karma. And in that way, he qualifies himself to receive the mercy of the Lord. So that verse is saying we should not blame anybody for the situation we are in. even if somebody criticizes us, we shouldn't take it personally, because Krishna has arranged things so wonderfully that all the people in our life, all the struggles we are going through, it's actually an opportunity for us, if we take it in the right way, to learn some kind of lesson, and that way progress to Krishna. But this verse is saying that the devotee is just kind of waiting, for the mercy to come, which is definitely correct, obviously. But there's another thing that I heard in another class, which makes a lot of sense as well, is that yes, we have to wait for Krishna's mercy, but at the same time, we have been given so much by Prabhupada, like his books, the process, the temples all around the world. Those things are actually with us right now. So we don't have to wait in one sense for those things, but we actually just have to use what he's given us. So these wonderful books that we have, there's so much of detail, so much of lessons and instructions we can learn. But if we don't really open it, read it, try to digest it, and try to practically implement it in our lives, then we actually not receiving the mercy that's right there in front of us. So Srila Prabhupada was so expert at arranging this whole process, having a morning program, chanting Hare Krishna, having prasad, all of these practical things that we can implement in our life, basically will help us to get the mercy of the Lord. The other thing is from the book Brihad Bhagavatam Rita, there's a story explained about Gopakumar, who's going throughout the universe looking for who is the devotee that has received the most mercy of the Lord. And what we find there is, right at the end, he goes through so many different, devotees. He goes from just ordinary brahmanas in that sense to demigods like Indra, Brahma, Shiva, and Hanuman. And then ultimately he comes to realizing that the gopis, and amongst all of the gopis, Srimati Radharani is actually the one who has received the most mercy of Krishna. And she has received that mercy because she has basically given everything to Krishna. Her whole purpose in life is just to please Krishna. So the way to get the mercy is to try to give our time, our efforts, our mental capacity, everything to Krishna in that sense. Some of the examples that I should have mentioned a bit earlier about people who are serious, I was speaking a bit nice. Some of the examples that we see in the Bhagavatam and in other places of devotees who are actually serious, we saw that Dhruva Maharaj, even though he's just a small boy of 5 years old, he became so serious that he left the kingdom when he couldn't sit on his father's lap, and he performed so much of austerities. Even Narada Muni came and said, "You're a small boy, you should go back home, be with your mother, etc." But no, he was so serious, so determined that he left everything to actually go and try to, get a better kingdom than his own father. But the thing there is, even though he had that intention, Krishna doesn't only see that, but he was so merciful in that way that when Dhruva Maharaj saw Lord Vishnu, he changed even his intention of getting this kingdom. He basically became such a great devotee of Krishna. So sometimes Krishna is so kind that even if our intention might not be the best, we might get some mercy from Krishna. If we have some sincerity in other aspects, he might give us an opportunity to actually get closer to him. The other example we find in the Bhagavatam of seriousness is that Maharaj Parikshit, even though he was the emperor of the world, when he was bitten, when he was cursed to die within 7 days by getting bitten by a snake bird, he could have easily thought to himself, you know what, I just have 7 days left. I'm going to enjoy my life to the fullest extent. He had all of the resources. He was the emperor of the world, riches, kingdom, everything. He could have just said, I've done what I could in my whole life. I did my duties very, very well. The kingdom is performing very well. I can just now take the 7 days and I can do whatever I'd like to just enjoy myself. But no, he actually became very, very serious to the extent that he received the mercy of Krishna by meeting Sukadev Goswami, and that mercy is now even flowing to us in the form of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Yes, so some of the other points that's mentioned here in this verse, it says that if he is a father instructing his sons, a spiritual master instructing his disciples, or he's a king that's instructing the citizens as he has advised, they should do so without becoming angry. So I have a lot of experience in this. I have 2 kids, and yes, all of the time as a parent, we have to instruct our kids, obviously for their benefit and our benefit. But many a time we can easily become very, very angry with situations. You might try a few times, please can you do this, please don't, say this word, etc. You might say it 5 times even, but then at the 6th time, your anger will take over and you might just start screaming, etc. So the point here Rishabh Dev is saying is that yes, we might have very, very good instructions that we have to give to the people that we are responsible for, etc. But we have to try, it's very, very hard, as I said, I know, but we have to try to always not become angry. What I've experienced in my own, interactions as well, that as soon as you become angry, actually, you end up getting more resistance from the other party. That is how it is. Even though I know that it still happens and it's gonna happen still, but you have to always try to remind yourself that, we have to come up with very clever ways, and Prabhupada was expert at this, and I mean, obviously, many devotees, of trying to get people who don't want to actually take the message of Krishna consciousness, but just like a parent has to try different ways, in order saying, instead of saying, stop doing this, you have to try to make a clever way of saying, you know what, why don't you try doing this? Or make a silly game with kids, etc. So in the same way, Prabhupada, he created this process again, and he gave this example of how with children again, if they are doing some mischievous activities, you can't tell them, can you just sit still? Don't do anything, don't say anything, just sit still, stop moving, stop doing anything. But a child is not able to do that. And similarly, adults are so conditioned to doing what they're currently doing. We as devotees cannot just say, stop doing this, stop illicit activities, stop taking intoxication, etc. But we have to show them something positive. Like a child, if a child is doing something wrong, Prabhupada said, if you give them an ice cream, they will just stop doing that and they'll have the ice cream. And similarly with people on the outside, if we try to give them something very good from Krishna consciousness and say, why don't you try doing this? I say this mantra when I'm very stressed out and I need to calm myself. I just close my eyes and I just chant this mantra, and you know what? It's worked for me. I'm able to have less anxiety. I'm able to be more calm and relaxed. And they might be like, oh, okay, I'll try that. That sounds like something I can do. They might try it, and then they might be like, this actually works. There's been so many examples in the past. There's one of Prabhupada's disciples. So his name is, I can't think of his name. I can't get his name, but he was saying that when he first was going to the temple, he would just go to eat prasadam. And this was at that time when Prabhupada was still here, obviously. So he would go to the temple, he would go to eat prasadam. He was actually studying religious studies at university. And he decided, oh, what's this new religious movement? I'll just go to hear what they have to say and see how it fits into what I'm studying. So he would go to the temple, he would eat some of the prasadam, and then he heard about this chanting. So he just started chanting by himself, in his room when he went home. And his name is Ravindra Swarup Prabhu. So yeah, he's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And so he would just start chanting. And he said, when at this early stages, not even speaking to devotees much. He'd just go, he'd listen to something, he'd read some of the books, and then he started chanting. He said when the chanting was so powerful, initially, after doing this for like a few weeks, he stopped chanting because he was like, this is not something normal, because I'm chanting now, and what's happening is I'm actually stopping all my activities that I'm doing. So whatever, material related activities he was doing, he was like stopping those things, and he was thinking, this is actually something very powerful. I don't want to kind of mess with it. I want to understand a bit more what this is before I get too much into it. So then he went back to the temple. He would speak about what this chanting is, and when he finally understood what it is, he realized he was getting the effect of chanting without even understanding what the purpose of the chanting was. So yes, in that way, we have to take this process that Srila Prabhupada has given us very seriously. And some of the points we discuss here is about becoming serious, understanding and accepting the mercy that's already in front of us, like Prabhupada's books, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, etc. And in that way, we will get the mercy of Krishna. We can't just sit around and wait for Krishna to become mercy to us in one sense. We have to actively try and use the things that Prabhupada has given us to get closer to Krishna. The other thing we mentioned that, yes, if you're in a position and you're instructing someone, we have to try to be kind in that way. We have to not get angry, and we have to come up with very clever ways of doing these things. So I think time is up at this point, but yes, if there's any questions, comments, additions, corrections, I'm happy to take those now, or please, if you have rules, please also do that. Yes. Anyone wants to say anything? Okay, thank you so much, and we'll stop there. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki,
Yeah.
Gaur Premanand.
Hari Hari Bol.
Yay.
Prabhupada ki.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you
Hari.
very much.
Thank you.